Hello and welcome back once again to Show Studio, where this morning we're still in Paris and we are in fact looking at Kenzo. But before we start looking at Kenzo, I would like you to look at our panellists this time and they will introduce themselves, starting with you, John Michael.
My name's John Michael O'Sullivan. I'm an architect and fashion writer.
I'm Rob Phillips and I'm the Creative Director of the School of Design and Technology at the London College of Fashion.
I'm Jess Bumpus and I'm Fashion Features Editor at Vogue.co.uk.
There you are, see, all well-qualified, intelligent people who are going to say amazing things for you. You're going to be thrilled and excited by these three, I just know. So let's begin by saying, let's start with you, Rob. What are you expecting from Kenzo? We're just beginning to get the pictures now, but when you were coming here, were you thinking, oh, what's it going to be like? What did you think of last season's, for example?
Well, actually, last season there was bits of last season I thought were really good. I'm getting a bit tired of the sky-based prints, not in terms of what Kenzo are doing, but even Calvin Klein has just done them again. And of course, with Raf has done that type of almost abstract print. So maybe a tiny bit tiresome. But as that last season show moved on, and you got more into this almost soft baby blue airline pilot-esque feel, and it can become quite moody towards the end, and they were speaking a lot about sort of security and safety of man. I thought that was maybe a lot more interesting, something maybe a lot more accessible from what I've come to expect of Kenzo, because every time someone says it now I think of a tiger head or masses of print somewhere, and the constant reference to jungle, urban jungle, sky jungle. It's I don't know. So on first thoughts of what I'm expecting, hopefully not another tiger head.
Right, well we can't guarantee at this stage, but I share your view. Did you buy anything last season from his collection?
It's strange actually. I look at it and I want it, and then I kind of, it makes me think of 80s when you start seeing a lot of logo-tastic, Zoni or Versace. I just think logo and the tiger logo. And then that sort of urban, what do they call it? Urban, I don't even like saying it because it makes me feel a little bit ill. That urban jungle, those 90s phrases. So it's like this 80s logo mania, then 90s phrases like urbana clothing or street jungle or street urban. It makes me kind of go, I don't know. So for me, I kind of thought, well, if I buy that, I buy a piece now, like it had some really beautiful caps in and some nice printed shirt collars. I felt it may date quite quickly, and I just don't shop like that. I really like trans-seasonal pieces.
Jess, how are you taking all of this? Because this seems to me to be quite a damning indictment.
Sorry.
No,
I love them and I'm very excited by them, and I think what they do with youth and how they've injected themselves back on the street of fashion kids who want to wear this and look cool and still have a street element about them. I think they do it absolutely beautifully.
I agree. Absolutely. I mean, they really have put sweatshirts back on the map. I mean, everyone, like when they started doing them, then you saw some other designers do them, and now over the last couple of seasons, like there is not a designer that's not doing a sweatshirt. They're everywhere. And that whole kind of streetwear sensibility, you are seeing it absolutely everywhere, and that's very much like the zeitgeist, the kind of moment we're in, I feel. And they're just really good at sort of making stuff cool. And it's funny what you say about those jumpers, because at first I was kind of like, I don't know, they didn't really sort of clock on my radar as much as like wanting one. But then when you do see them, I'm kind of like, if I don't buy one of these, I feel like I'm going to miss out. And I know that I'm going to be like, I really wish I got a Kenzo jumper. So I think what they do is really clever. And I mean, it'll be really interesting to see how long it stays, because I think it's very much tapping into like the moment we're in. We're quite sort of nostalgic for 90s and millennium, which is like the whole skate culture, surfers, all that. So it'll be interesting to see when that eventually moves on, whether they need to too, whether they are the driving force behind that, or what, really.
Do you think there's a danger that what they're doing could become dated very quickly?
Well, I think it's becoming saturated because obviously everyone else is kind of, as I say, doing that. Even houses and designers that you wouldn't think a sweatshirt would exist, there is one. There's like a luxe version or something. So that's the thing. Like at first, like sweatshirts was like, oh, that's different. That's a sweatshirt, and now it's like, a sweatshirt. So, I mean, having said that, I can't stop buying them. But
unless it was a Balenciaga Egypto Funk sweatshirt.
Well,
so I kind of thought Nicholas has, in the past 10 years, had bought, he's bought the sweatshirt.
Oh, absolutely.
Back
I think
to
it was a kind of, like, absolutely, from a couple of seasons ago, the sweatshirt, it was kind of, I think, a dual sort of thing. But with Kenzo, I think obviously that's more of an accessible brand for certainly younger people. You know, people can't really afford Balenciaga, but Kenzo, those jumpers, like £200, if that, which is a much better price point. Yeah. But no, I agree. Balenciaga was very much...
Everyone's doing it. Everyone has to have a sweatshirt now.
It really is.
Yes.
And I think
do you mean every designer has to produce one?
I mean, I think since I saw that Nicholas's sweatshirt and it was so beautifully cut, and you know, then suddenly everyone started wearing it to the fashion shows, and Tommy Tom shot it all, and you know, everyone was wearing an Egypto funk sweatshirt. And the next thing, every other designer, men's and women's, it's just absolutely, and it's that round shape, isn't it? This sort of very moulded, almost neoprene looking, and I just think. I don't think it's ever going to go away.
But it's really
understand why you want it.
It will go away.
I want it.
Well, it's interesting though that it's happening in both menswear and women's wear. It's kind of, you know, it's a unisex item, and it's interesting that it's had that much of a impact. Like, it, you know, and fashion at the moment is having this really interesting gender swap thing go on. So it's interesting.
Michael, what do you have?
I was going to say is actually just on that point, I think it seems to really have jumped out this season particularly because I guess last season just felt very sushi and very, particularly in London, there was just a lot of very traditional stuff. And suddenly in London, Milan and Paris, it's gone completely, it feels like kind of everything has kind of exploded in terms of bomber jackets, shorts, sweatshirts, and it's almost, it felt like every show you kind of checked it off the list. It was there, and it really feels like that's coming out and that's going to be the uniform. It feels really, really kind of, I mean, I can't think of any show where I have Gucci or sort of very sporty, Salvatore Ferragamo, all these brands that don't have it in their sort of heritage. Were sort of, and obviously in London particularly, there were so many people kind of embracing it. But obviously OC and the guys here, that's something that they've been doing for years. But as you're saying, Balenciaga really were the ones that I think...
Well, in this decade.
Yeah.
We're getting towards the end of the menswear season shows now. Do you think that the lead is coming from Paris, Milan, or London, or even New York?
I kind of feel like we're seeing a lot of the same thing. Like, it's florals everywhere. There's lots of lace. It's a lot of feminine details. This kind of inversion to really raiding a woman's wardrobe, which is so interesting because for so long it's been vice versa, which I'm finding fascinating. But I feel like menswear as a whole, it's very strong because everyone's kind of singing to the same tune. And like, again, everyone's doing a floral, or everyone's doing lace, or everyone's doing a wider short, or I mean, you know, Raf had the kind of all-in-ones, and then J.W. Anderson had the halter necks, and so it just feels like it's really everything's working together, which is quite nice.
Did you think with the halter necks that was a feminization too far?
I liked it a lot. I thought it was really clever. Yeah.
You'd like to see your boyfriend in it, or your husband?
I think I'd like to wear one.
Oh well.
And you could swap.
Exactly. See.
Well, you can see this whole feminine, I don't know what people are calling it, but it's been coming through for at least a decade, and I thought mainly more so through men's accessories. You know, obviously from the man bag turning into, well, if you go from your man bag right the way to the other day, I saw a guy holding what looked like a small square leather pouch, the little leather chain off of it. He hung around it, just sort of flared it, and people would go, well, that looks kind of girly. It didn't. He looked really good.
John Michael, what do you feel? Do you think that these things play well in the major cities, but how are they going to do in Preston or Detroit or I don't know, God knows where, you know, Brindisi or whatever, you know?
Brindisi is a tough market.
Yeah, I think it probably is. That's the tough nut. I mean, you know, are we talking about Planet Fashion when we're saying it's great, it's coming, it's exciting and all the rest of it? Or do we feel that there is a sort of movement to take in other people? What I'm really saying is I think that London fashion has begun to engage people who are not necessarily fashionistas. They're not the people who are living in Hoxton or in Soho or whatever, you know? And that's what I find interesting. Do you feel that? I mean, you're much younger and you're part of it. What do you feel?
I think the language definitely, particularly in London, and what I was going to say is the trajectory, I think, of menswear is very different now that you have London at the start of the schedule, because it used to be Pitti was obviously the commercial stuff, and then you had a few days in Milan, and Paris was where everything happened. Now you have 3 days in London, which is kind of quite eclectic, for want of a better word, but very busy, lots of stuff going on.
And very strong.
Yeah, and then it kind of slumps, to be honest, when you get into Milan, and then comes back up into Paris. But Paris has felt a little bit I guess because there's less of a build-up to it, it hasn't felt as interesting. But I think London especially, it does seem, you know, when you look at the Christopher Shannons and all of those people, maybe it's part of the vocabulary again that it is these sweatshirts and this kind of casual uniform, for want of a better word. It's tricky when you say uniform because it implies something quite, you know, perhaps dull, but it does feel quite universal in an awful lot of ways.
I think there's a terrific amount of correspondence between all the 4 capitals now, the fashion capitals. You know, there are things that are being perhaps exploited in different ways, but the same thinking behind them. Would you agree with that?
I mean,
no, you're not so sure?
Oh,
I'm just trying to bring you all in,
Yes.
you know.
I know. I was just thinking about what you were saying about
Yeah.
you know, how something translates in, say, Preston. And I have to. I think when we see stuff like this, if you go to Selfridges in London, then you pop into Selfridges in Birmingham, what they stock is almost...
Is it very different?
I thought it was completely different, and I thought
Really?
they were really
Yeah.
trying to engage a label-driven mentality as opposed to an appreciation of cut and construction. It was very much, where's my logo?
Well,
I
think
thought that
if
was
you're
quite
just-
scary. If that's how we spread. But then, of course,
Well-
when you start thinking of price points, who does buy the big Balenciaga
Yeah.
coat,
Yeah,
but they may buy the small
Yes.
coin purse or fragrance.
I think also the names obsession is quite important as a coming in rite of passage, really. You learn a name and you think, yes, this is the name I've got to have.
Yeah.
Then the next season you think, well, yeah, there's another name that's better or whatever, and eventually you reach the stage that you
build
are,
up your own
where you
palette.
look at the clothes and not the label. At least I hope you do.
Yeah.
You know, what label are you wearing?
So this is Sunspell.
What
I'm
label are
on
you
the
wearing?
cheap
Cassini?
Leicester.
Wild Fox.
Right. Well, ask me. I'm wearing Ralph Lauren because I'm rich. Right. Let's go back.
Next time I wear all my Jill Sandal and go, now I'm very poor.
Now let us look at what Kenzo's got for us. We'll look at one or two first of all. Maybe, well, chip in whenever you feel you've got something to say, which could be right now. What do we think of the print?
I mean, it works really well graphically. It's interesting that they've gone quite dark because they've gone through that cycle of, you know, launching and
Yes,
being
it's-
super colourful.
Yeah.
And then as you're saying, last season went quite soft and cloudy. And this, again, it feels like a little change in direction, but graphically I like it.
Home straight in on the last shot's flip flop or
I was gonna say,
sandal that
what
I
are the
want
shoes?
instantly.
Oh, let's go back
have you
to the
seen
sandal.
What do the shoes say?
Exactly.
They're
Yes.
super cool.
Kenzo, maybe, if you're on the other foot, you've got the whole. But again, there's your item that's going to go into Liberty.
Exactly.
And we're
That-
all
yes.
Okini, and we're all
Yes.
going
Exactly,
to.
yeah.
It's going to be a popular
Yes.
item.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lovely. The outfit.
But then, you know, equally, it's a sort of, you know, it's those pieces that ultimately you'll be able to buy, you know, in Top Man, just on the high street, put together like a great shirt, a bomber, and that you've got the look. And I think that's, again, one of the things they're very good at doing. It's more like a curation of style. And I think there are a lot of designers that are very successful right now because that's what they're doing. And I think that is just as important as, you know, beautiful, crazily designed clothes or whatever. But it's tapping into that mentality of how people dress. And as you say, like, would you wear that in Preston? It's getting that fine line between being a point of difference but not too crazy.
I mean, if we look at this, I don't think there's anything that would frighten people in Preston very much. You know, I think that the fact that it's black and white and grey or whatever helps a lot because it's when it goes pink, yellow, orange that some chaps get a bit nervous, you know. What do we... Sorry, can we go back? That's a knitted cardigan, is it, that he's wearing on top? Or is it... What is it that he's wearing?
I thought it's like there's some sort of printed T-shirt underneath.
It's a
what's
T-shirt
potentially
underneath.
a bomber.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a bomber
A printed bomber, maybe.
on a cardigan.
Which looks rather nice, actually. Do you like
I'm
that?
surprised about this being an opening. That's the only thing I'm a bit
Well-
more dubious about. I'm not.
You're not confident.
But the first look and this look,
Yeah.
and I suddenly I thought, oh, look, maybe midway I might expect this.
Yes.
But from Kenzo, I would envisage a much bigger opening or a very statement silhouette.
Yes,
Or,
yes.
but this is, it's happening now. You could wander into Topshop and
Sure.
easily, put this
Absolutely.
ensemble together.
Absolutely. Well, maybe he's going to present things which will frighten us later.
We love being
Yeah, lulling us
frightened.
into false
Lulling
sense.
And out comes a onesie.
It's interesting, I know talking to Gordon Richardson a few years ago, going through some of the Topman design stuff. They went through a phase when they were doing a lot of sportswear in really bold block colours. None of it sold, but the monochrome versions flew out of the shops.
Yeah.
So that is where, you know, the translation definitely can work, and there is a comfort zone, I think, still for a lot of men with the blacks, the blues,
with darker
sort of-
colours. Yes, absolutely.
which is a pity in some ways, because what's been nice about the Kenzo Renaissance has been this
The
injection
colour,
of
exactly. Are we getting a bit bored with blue?
Never too
No.
bored with blue.
Never too
Endless
bored.
blue.
Blue skies forever.
It's such a. I think blue.
skies forever.
For me, blue is
Blue, white and black,
Such
which we've
a
got
great
there,
colour.
is a fabulous combination.
really
Yeah.
good.
Because they really sharpen each other up.
And what's clever about that is it's, you know, like a suit jacket, but with that colourway, it makes it more sporty, and so it
Yeah,
kind
yes,
of, you know,
absolutely.
again makes it kind of accessible.
It's a good blue, that. It's a very good blue.
There's echoes here of Prada Spring Summer 13 actually, with beautiful clean lines,
Yes.
the white stripe between
Yes. But we're not saying that in a critical way, are we?
No, not at
Because-
all. I think
because really
that collection was really successful.
Yes.
It's clean, beautiful linear lines, great, and I'm seeing a little bit of that, which makes me warm to this a bit more.
Yes. But also, I think that what I would say, Rob, is Miuccia Prada is really unavoidable. She's
Absolutely.
going to have an influence
Yeah.
in some way or another right across the board. And really, in a way, it's an homage to her that people do feel that they can take something from her and make it their own. To me, that's a lovely look for a young guy.
Very accessible. I'd wear
Is
that.
it too? Is it too accessible for
No,
for a high fashion?
I'd wear
label?
that, and it depends what you put with it, doesn't it? If you put on the coming season Prada gigantic commando sole shoes, I mean, you'd look
change
boss,
it
wouldn't you?
completely. Yes,
Amazing.
indeed you would, Pal.
With maybe a small clutch bag, we'd bring in the feminine
Exactly.
He's
and
determined about
lace
these
underwear. we're really doing
Job
the whole
done.
ensemble. I mean, job done.
Okay, let's have another one.
They've kind of scaled down the prints a lot in the first few looks at least, haven't they?
You can
coming
see
in,
now they're
yeah.
starting to bring it out, and if that's probably going to, I bet that echoes over now
I like
into that sort of almost paintbrush-esque streak that you're seeing in the collar. It's great. It's very graphic. I mean, it is sometimes it makes you think, doesn't it? If you didn't know we were watching Kenzo, could you think, I wonder if, is this Raf? Is this?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You start playing with all these, or is it Neil Barrett?
Yeah.
Yes.
He loves his graphic,
Yeah.
Yes. Which means it's a movement.
and there
There
it
we
is.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I
Beautiful.
love that.
Great.
It's just sort of like shading in when you're a little kid, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know, got the touch of the hand, that personal sort of almost craft element because of that print, but then,
Yes.
Like biro
Yeah.
graffiti
Yes.
when you're in school.
Yeah.
Sitting down, you just
And
used
that's the thing,
to
that's
write
so
your
good,
name
it's
for
playful.
Waiting for the
Yeah.
bell to release you. Yes, absolutely. I
From
think that's
math.
lovely. And that wouldn't frighten anybody.
I love that code.
That's amazing.
Yes.
I think it's where they've kind of worn the heritage quite lightly as well. They haven't, each season they haven't gone back and gotten for heritage prints, which I think a lot of people do. They've kind of found something
Something a
and
little
created
different,
something that
yes.
kind of feels...
That's the thing, they've
Yes.
put their stamp and moved it forward.
Yeah.
It feels like a
Yes.
whole new chapter with them.
Yes.
Do we know what the prints are?
No.
They're very American casual.
I'm loving this blue, this sort of deep blue.
We've always saw the set before, and it's quite an athletic sort of gymnasium feel, so it's obviously something
Oh,
that
very
they're...
much so, yes.
I like
That's
that look.
terrific.
Is that a logo?
That's a sweater, I think.
Yeah,
can see a K.
sweatshirt alert.
And I think that might be a logo. And
Yeah.
the tiger head. I think it's the tiger head from here. It looks, but it's been.
It looks like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
been drawn
Brushed.
like with a pencil or something almost.
Yes. Can we make that bigger? No.
Go closer.
But I love the three-step layer. You know,
Yeah.
your big,
Yeah.
slightly smaller, and that wide, beautiful fluid pant.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
sort of
definitely.
slightly Eve's Klein blue, maybe.
It's really...
Very Eve Klein. The thing about it is that it's very elegant there.
Very.
It's
Yeah.
casual. It's not particularly demanding to the wearer, but the effect is very,
finished
very
very, yeah.
elegant.
I wish they'd put with the sandals there, the flip
I
flops.
agree, actually.
Really
Yes.
want,
Well,
I'm not loving that slightly
Yes.
Note to
more-
stylist.
Yeah,
1
please.
point knocked off for
Sorry.
style. Okay, another one, please. Back to the black and white.
And I really like these kind of higher lapels, and then I think those are nice.
Yeah.
With the contrast.
And the collars are almost like an old-fashioned sailor's collar,
Yes.
you know, where it used to come down the back in a little sort of, like a little
absolutely.
apron or something.
I like the boys' choppy fringes. It makes me want to go and have a choppy
I
fringe.
was going to say next time we see you,
You will, you will. And a sweater.
and sandals. We've got.
But no, like mine was a Kenzo. If I can paint
You'll
it
have scribbled them
correctly.
on.
I'll go and get mine from the market for $1.99 and do it with
See,
a felt
that's
tip
the
at home. But that isn't. But it wouldn't. Did you not do that? Like if we're talking about kids or people that are
Exactly.
in Preston or Bognor Regis. When I was young, I'm going to have this. Obviously, if I'm 12 years old and I'm obsessed with Jean-Paul Gaultier. I can't afford Gaultier. I don't even know where Gaultier would be stocked. But you'd sit and I'd graffiti on my t-shirts and draw little tattoo motifs. I even tried to do the stripe, so I had
Commitment.
a t-shirt.
Yeah.
You did it yourself.
Really?
Yeah, because it's commitment to the.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't afford it, and if you grow up in Birmingham, no one sold Gaultier.
You probably couldn't even pronounce it.
Oh, half of Birmingham have just gone. You are.
No, please, not Birmingham.
Come on, us Brummers can pronounce
people-
Gaultier.
No, people have a lot of problems with, or did used to have a lot of problems with names. Versace was always Versace.
Of course.
Which is
Paul Saint Laurent,
It's
Saint
very-
Laurent.
Yes, isn't that somewhere in Canada?
That's blue's becoming really important, isn't it? Like, especially with a colour schematic like that.
I mean, is that camouflage we're seeing, which again has sort of made a resurgence in women's wear as well?
It's some
It's a
sort
bit
of
softer
print.
than that, doesn't it?
Certainly, it's either sort of a tigery sort of thing. I think it probably is camouflage.
Yeah.
I think that's great. It's the sort of thing that I would buy and wear forever in the country. I mean, that I live in Monmouthshire most of the time, and that wouldn't frighten the people at Monmouth Market. Or maybe not. I hope not.
I love those trousers. I really like those.
So at this point, we're slightly over halfway. We're really very pleased with this. We're enjoying it very much.
I was kind of expecting not to like it, to be honest, because I think
Why?
I think I, as I say, loved the relaunch and I felt there was so much energy, and I guess coming from their background, being retailers, I kind of wanted them to do more, or I wanted them to, they sort of seem to kind of take that energy and then slightly dampen it down into becoming part of the schedule, whereas Paris doesn't really have a lot of youngness in terms of what you actually see in the catwalks, and it felt like they were slightly kind of just blending into the background. But there's something quite confident about this, and something quite sort of, this is who we are, which I wasn't probably expecting to see. I still kind of think there's, Kenzo are in that interesting place where they're not, in the same zone as the Balenciagas, and I kind of think, well,
But they kind
why
of
are you
shouldn't
showing
be.
in this kind of
No,
concept?
I don't
Why
think they
aren't
would
you-
necessarily want to.
Yeah, I
be in
think
the
that
same
would
zone.
miss the point
You
of
know,
them.
it would miss the point.
Yeah.
Are we saying then that this is perhaps their first really committed statement? Is that what the statement which they're making their own?
I think it's the clearest. It's, as I say, it's not a statement that I thought, where I thought they were necessarily going, but actually feels quite, strong.
Right. Rob, you're looking a little doubtful about that.
No, I don't know if I can call it strong. I think there's some signatures coming through, and I think it reminds me a lot of Ili Kishimoto and the commitment to print, repeat print, and trying to hone that as your signature. And I think that's what they're really strong with, and colour. Some of the silhouettes I like more than others. I think that trouser is really important. The 3-layer large to small is really important. The last silhouette on there with the big coat, I think that's, I want to wear that now. But whether I think I need to see them do more collections to be able to, to give a proper answer.
To really assess where they stand.
Yeah, I think yeah.
I think, before we've seen a lot of that whole jungle thing, as you're saying, and lots of bright colour blocking, and this does feel like, I guess, a better edit maybe of what they're doing or where they're going, and it does feel quite exciting to see what the next season would then be, because this does feel like a kind of departure from that sort of loud brights, and it does feel like it's got more of a stamp on it, which I like.
So it's a curtain closer and a curtain opener for next season.
I think so.
Can we go back one, please? Is that a Mac or is that a cloth coat, or what is that?
looks like a good old cotton
Yeah,
mat, doesn't it?
It looks lovely.
And I guess there's kind of a likeness
And there's
about it as well, isn't there?
they look like the Vans, doesn't they? Again, another super accessible shoe.
Yeah, they did the collaboration with them.
And how much can you pick them up for?
Like 50 quid.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, 30 quid in the sale.
Gosh.
If they even get to sell, but by
Exactly.
that time, you know, all your street fashion kids would have hoovered
Exactly.
the small accessories. Absolutely, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like in that respect, it's quite clever and on a par with like Mark by Marc Jacobs, who does sort of all those knick-knack bits that you can get, which are really comfortable and cult, and you just want them because they're cool. And you know, designers to be able to do that, it's very, very clever, but you have to get it just right to get that level of desirability.
It's very hard to judge the zeitgeist, just what is going to be the thing that's going to grab people.
Yeah.
And that's the genius. If you can do that, then you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But these guys know what cool is, don't they? And they know what cool is to a very specific part of the market, a very specific generation, and who are going to love them.
What's the upper age limit for these sort of clothes? John Michael, what do you think?
It's tricky because there are things in there you pull out, like you're saying, there's the coats particularly. You know, I'm not a shorts person, so that kind of eliminates a chunk of that, but most of the t-shirts and coats I love, and the trousers are really
Love a
good.
good short.
On someone else, I like a good short. But
Rob's going to take
You can rock
Rob
a
is going to
short.
find you some shorts, I
The
can tell.
Jill Sander ones from this season were amazing. I bought all colours, amazing.
There you are.
Beautiful long length, less emphasis on it. We're speaking about Kenzo.
He's like going, his face is going,
No.
We don't charge you for this styling.
I was going to say,
I think maybe we should
it's
do a
all
dress up next time. We're suddenly going to wheel on a rail of shorts.
I'm bringing my first community
What a
pictures.
great
I had some
idea.
very good
That's
shorts as a
such
child.
I love it.
But it does feel like there's, you know, as Rob was saying, they have that appeal to a very specific part of the market, but this does feel like them maybe stepping a little bit more away from opening ceremony and a little bit more into the Kenzo
Right.
sort of
Dangerous
space.
territory, I think.
But
I think that's kind of good though.
yeah, that's not
Because
bad.
to me the problem
Dangerous
a little bit
territory.
has been that, I mean, I've looked at some of the recent stores, and this is me looking at the retail design more than the clothes, but there's actually a bit of a blur, and so to actually be separating yourself feels quite healthy, I think.
I remember I went to see, well, not specifically just Kenzo, but when I was in LA and went to the beautiful opening ceremony
it's an amazing
store,
shop.
which I have to admit the way they laid it out was pretty dreadful, and no respect for fashion whatsoever. I mean, rails just chocker. But I felt this affiliated really well with that. I mean, obviously it's going to, isn't it? Because of, but I think is it a bit dangerous to step away from that, to introduce a sort of more refined element when really, like we've been saying, there's a generation of kids who die for this stuff. And
Well, I think that's what will be interesting to see as we move on a couple more seasons. Like, obviously, it will depend, you know, how it sells, etc. But again, with this, there are certain pieces like jackets and that are kind of smarter, and you know that sort of someone that's maybe not super into fashion, that's older, but knows that if I get Kenzo, but it will be still for them a sort of badge of like,
That's very interesting, Jess. Do you think that it is the shape, the colour, or the cut that differentiates something which someone in his 30s can wear, but from someone who can only be worn by someone in his 20s, and where do the 40s come in, because that's where all the real money is. You know,
I think it's kind of to do with the styling, because I think with the way they've put these pieces together, you know, the jacket will be over something like really amazing and printed, and you can break it down. Like, that's the thing with each of these things, you can take it all apart and then you could put it back together again. You know, to be something very simple and classic almost, or to be more street and kind of cult. So I think, it'll be interesting to see where they go with it, but I do think there are sort of more sophisticated pieces within that.
Can we go back just one to the first splash of colour? Any comments on that?
I love red.
It's a very much
Tomato
a flame.
red.
It's a flame red. It's really, it's an orangey red, isn't it, in a way?
It's cool, yeah.
Which is a beautiful colour with white. It goes beautifully.
It's very fresh.
Yes, crisp.
It's the shape of the trousers is lovely as well, isn't it? Just it's quite fluid and
Yes. Quite baggy almost,
Yeah.
aren't they?
I like that proportion of, you know, slightly more fitted top and then obviously relaxed trousers. So Yeah, see, it's fine. Long.
Short.
Long. This could go on.
And then we move into postmodern skatewear.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's really cool. I really like that look.
But if we could just superimpose a little skateboard underneath it,
Well,
would be quite
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Everyone,
Yes.
all the guys have been having skateboards on the catwalks this season. In London, I clocked about 3. That, if it's not a man bag, it's a skateboard. That's what
Right,
you've got to be
yes.
carrying. So, there you go.
Can't fit anything in it.
Skateboard summer,
Yeah.
man bag winter.
Yeah.
It's probably as simple as that. That, I think, would take a bit of courage. We're back to Preston and Birmingham, aren't we?
I think it's an easy silhouette to wear. It's just the level of colour, isn't it? And I think actually
Yes.
remove your strange boxing boot in the graphic and put on something like a basic white plimsoll, and it's a lot more easier straight away.
Yes.
I think, and if you took the jacket off, really, have you not just got a t-shirt and some loose gym shorts?
What do you think of the loose gym shorts?
I don't think the cut's particularly exciting.
No.
I like this again. I like the silhouette as a whole, but it's not like how. And again, it shouldn't be like you said, but it's not like how Jill Sander just presented shorts again for next spring summer, which are absolutely beautiful with the giant turn up and the wide leg, stunning. So to me, it's just more of a. This is just it's a basic short in a good pop colour.
Yes, it's the colour that makes them perhaps a little memorable.
Yeah.
But certainly not the colour.
But equally, it's interesting because, as I say, we're seeing quite a lot of wide, baggier shorts, and it's almost like you just need like the simple versions, the classic sort of ones to make that change and that switch in fashion for that mood. Like, it doesn't need to sort of necessarily be out there, but you just need to put that, because without those, it wouldn't be that silhouette, and that's what you're like really
Absolutely.
enjoying.
Yes, that's very, very true.
One defines the other.
Exactly. Without one, you don't have the other.
This
is
I
nice.
think gets on my. To be honest with you,
Oh, you
I
don't like this?
dislike this a lot. I'm
Why?
getting really sick of the placement, abstract block print T-shirt thing. I've
Why
seen
is
it
it
for
just this one? Because we've had some of those already.
I think it's just. I mean, Givenchy, Riccardo were doing. There's a square, the Madonna, and then there was Calvin, Sky, square. I think it's just. I think maybe about 4 seasons, maybe even longer, and then when it goes to retail, seeing it in store, I don't know what the designer's obsession is with everything being in a square as an abstract print, but I find it almost too repetitive, and I couldn't tell you which designer does it better now because so many are doing it.
Right.
I think I don't like that sort of element of trend where really it's.
Everyone's doing the same thing.
And it makes it pointless.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you anything. It doesn't give the collection anything. To me, this isn't serving a purpose like the beautiful sort of lime blue print.
Right,
This isn't.
yeah.
This is just.
This is something
bang.
stuck on. Yes, really. John Michael, what do you feel? Does this
It
appeal
doesn't
to your
upset me enormously.
Well, I was wondering if it would be appealing to your architectural mind. Because it is quite architectural, yes?
People often can ask, sort of ask an architect, what, do you expect structure, and do you expect, sort of do you see things in a different way? And I don't think you do necessarily, but you tend to look for, I think you always tend to look for an overall meaning and an overall sort of narrative. And I think you're quite, as an architect, you're quite more realistic about design. So, you want it to reflect modernism, you want it to reflect what life is like now. And you have quite a tricky relationship with surface decoration. So there definitely is a kind of always a bit of a query of, if something looks tacked on, is it better off just not being there? As it happens, this to me it looks like what a pleasant, image on a sweatshirt. I don't like the trousers, but it's not enormously upsetting.
I think it upsets me because I think of old Helmut Lang
It's just the last
advertising, and
straw.
Helmut Lang did that so much better. If I've got a Lang, even just in seeing an advert, I think the whole graphism, the almost slightly
is
obscurity.
Is it that he did it better, Rob, or is it that you're very old-fashioned now?
If I could have children called Helmut Lang, I'd have them. So maybe I'm just. But we have our obsessions, don't we? And when you're rooted in an
it was
obsession,
a long time ago.
it was not that long ago.
But it's
Fashion
yeah, exactly. And I think there's a whole generation of kids, people,
course,
whatever, who
of
don't
course.
know,
Don't even
who
know
won't
what
know
it
what
is.
you're talking about.
No,
And that's
Well,
the
then
thing.
pick up a book and
Well,
see
quite,
what
but-
or Wikipedia.
What's the book?
Kids
A
Wikipedia.
book, preferably one written by me.
Absolutely. And now you're going to take out a copy and show it to the camera.
With a screen, now available.
Just yes.
Shall we all get a plug-in
All right.
of some sort?
plug over, so let's...
No, I mean, you're right. And I shouldn't re-reference or think about it, but it just didn't seem that exciting to me. And I think I've seen so much of it these past 6 seasons that I've just...
To make a serious point, the fact is we are saturated with so much, so even the most exciting thing becomes a little boring very quickly.
Yes.
Whereas for people who are not in the front line of fashion, it's a very different story. I
Of
think.
course.
And kind of you have to, as I say, sort of make the point before it even permeates, kind of
Yes.
like
Absolutely.
real life.
So you've
you know.
got to repeat.
Yes, exactly.
Experience
It's funny because
reality.
the thing I wasn't that offended by it, but I was intrigued by the fact the jumper was tucked into the trousers.
Yeah.
Would you
And
do that?
what was the fabric as well?
I don't know.
Well, we had a discussion at school the other day, and I tucked one of my jumpers. I had a beautiful, really fine knit Acne jumper, and I tucked it into my very, very slim fit Dries Van Noten trousers, and it worked really, really well. And one of the ladies I was working with said, "Do you know, it's only people who are literally bone and skin who can do that, because if you put any other form of knitwear under the trousers, of course you end up with a big old line. Not easy to do."
Exactly.
I never appreciated it as much as I did that day. But
Right, well, I think that's it. We've seen them. No, we haven't seen them. A few more? Oh, right. I thought we'd gone back.
no, I think we started. I think
That's beautiful.
We started.
the show opener wasn't the show opener that I thought it was.
Because
Yes, so it was the big blue graphics that was the show
that
opener.
explains
That's
everything, yes.
Very nice.
That is very nice, actually.
But that would be difficult to wear, and that isn't going to go down well in Preston or Newcastle. Or,
I mean, they have had this thing, haven't they? I think one of the things they picked up on from the heritage was the fact that Kenzo always had a lot of reversible clothes. So you wonder how many of these things actually are.
I wonder. Well, I think if they were, they would have been taking them off on the runway and letting us see.
Have a twirl.
Yeah.
they definitely like this sort of rectangle, symmetrical placement, don't they? It's and they're great sandals again. I like that sporty sort of rubber flip-flop.
Can we read that? Does it matter if we can't?
Something in stone.
Do you think that's the same as the one that had it all blocked out?
Same kind of format.
Yeah.
Does that bring anything though to this
Max
collection?
out. See, I think that's just too much to read. I love things that have got something on, but it's got to be one or two words.
Yeah, or it needs to be profound and poignant.
You know, you've got to stare or run after them. You know, you get yourself into terrible trouble on a Saturday night.
Is it that Givenchy factor of feeling that you have to inject a thing that people will buy each season?
Maybe that could well
It's
be.
not
a
just
pity.
Givenchy, is it? It's every single line I think now is trying to do something which they know that everyone can access at some level, and that's what makes it a bit diluted and dare I say polluted. Does everybody need to do that, or can we just appreciate like labels for what they are? You were saying, you're absolutely right. Balenciaga's a completely different world from what Kenzo is, a different customer, and they should be that.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that's what. But if everyone
How
starts
boring if
doing,
they're all the same.
if everyone starts doing a big old, I mean, go home, don't even buy that. Buy a t-shirt for whatever, get some Posca pens and write your own at home. Or pop down there's good printers down here who do your t-shirt for you. Why would you buy again?
Well,
because I just don't think that doesn't
because
serve
it won't
a
be
purpose.
Kenzo, people go nice t-shirt.
Do what I do though. You were used to when I was younger, and you rip out the label and write in the back. I used to put McQueen. I didn't even know. I didn't even know what the label looked like. I just wrote McQueen because I thought.
I love it. I
everyone
want to
loves
see your
McQueen.
archive of your t-shirts.
So there
I
are,
wish my mum sells it on eBay and it's not even real.
so there are advantages to being fashionista in Birmingham. You can get away with murder, clearly.
I think it's not as much. I think sometimes maybe this is the working class kid in me speaking, but you know, you grow up, you don't have this money, you suddenly pick up, I remember picking up a copy of Marie Claire, there was this beautiful double-page spread of Gautier, what was it, the big sort of Jewish collection.
The Hasidic Jew.
The Hasidic Jew collection, and I just sat there and straight away, that was it. I was like, and then there was the one with all the money, tattoo prints, and I was engaged. It was, and you can't afford it, so you fantasize about it. And the fantasy I started to learn to draw, and And I don't think I'm the only kid who would have done that. It's like this romantic, I can't afford it. I don't know what it even is. I don't even feel like I should be reading Marie Claire. But
well, I expect your dad felt that as well. The way,
he got over it. Eventually, he got over it. But I think the same would be now, wouldn't it? If you can't afford it, you can't do it, but you still love it, you'll find a way to do something. Whether that's imitating or you learn to make clothes yourself. And I guess that's how loads of guys become a designer now, is because you started doing stuff. Or we get into fashion in some way.
John Michael, did you ever have any sort of apocalyptic moment when suddenly your world changed because you got fashion?
I guess I lived in Milan in the early 90s. I did a kind of a year out from college there, and so I was kind of there seeing, I remember going to the Emporio Armani stores in Versace, and it felt like a different world. I didn't feel like it was a world that I necessarily had a right to be in, but it was, you'd go in and you'd pick up the magazines full of amazing photography, and it felt incredibly thrilling, really. So I experienced it probably through shops, and then it was much later that I even thought about actually connecting to the clothes, because I think, you're growing up, you're sort of, it took me a while to feel, I think, confident in engaging with clothes, really, and kind of figuring out
I think it is quite
myself.
Daunting to find out how you fit into this, because most young men, probably because they don't have enough money, are quite sort of scruffy and wear clothes perhaps longer than they would really ideally want to. And you look at a shop like Armani or who else, Ralph Lauren, and you think, I don't fit in there. That doesn't happen with girls, does it really, or does it?
I don't know. I think it probably does to a degree. I don't know, because you're a certain type of woman. Like I find this really interesting how, some designers definitely have a woman in mind and some don't at all. They kind of renounce that idea, and it's interesting how in their head they sort of map that out, and they're like, she does this and she has that for breakfast and she goes shopping and she's got friends, and some of them take it too far. But I find that really interesting because I am a woman and potentially the woman, but I'm not sure I'm ever like the woman that they're designing for. But I guess my style is a bit of a mishmash, and I'm quite laid back, and certainly there are some designers and labels that I would go into and be like, oh, I don't fit in here because it's too high octane or it's too glossy. But I think, I don't know, I guess you just kind of find your way. And obviously there's a lot more, it's much more easy to access sort of the diluted versions of these because of the high street. And, you go into Topshop and suddenly you won't realise, but you're wearing a bit of like diluted Givenchy or Marc Jacobs or whatever. Like so I think you kind of find things that way, and then you can go and seek out the big guns.
Yes, and in that process, of course, you've stopped being the woman. You've become your woman, who is using the ideas that he's created that appeal to you as your own woman. And I think that's true with men as well, isn't it? Do you think men buy sort of a whole look? I wouldn't have thought so.
I tend just to buy. I tend to buy things and then worry about whether it suits me later. So I'll just pick something up, and if it looks pretty,
you have to try it on and
I do sometimes, but I don't necessarily think about the whole thing. I have a lot of clothes that I don't wear. But that's
stand waste.
eBay.
Can't stand waste.
He's going to be chasing your mum on selling high fashion.
Stop selling the fakes.
I do. Actually, my brother years ago went and did a personal shopper thing at Selfridges, and it may have been just a bad experience, but they said, "Oh, you're a Nigel Hall guy," and they took him to Nigel Hall and said, "Whatever you need in there, it's fine." It was a bit like, this is more or less who you are. You're probably not super into clothes, but this will keep you covered and decent, and it'll all match.
But do you really? Would you really? I'm not knocking your brother, but would you really listen to what a personal shopper told you?
I think at the time he just wanted,
Because we can say that.
Yeah.
Because I always think this, when you see the big sections, personal shopper, and there's a big rise, and they're really popular now. And actually, I think if I think about some guys I know who aren't fashion at all, but they talk about wanting to look more, not necessarily fashionable, they just want to look more than they do look now. And I'm guessing that's how they would engage and trust somebody. Maybe they don't have friends who are, I don't know, so knowledgeable about clothing, or I don't know, or how it. I guess it's nice to have someone stand there and say, "You look great in that." who you don't know, because you never trust a friend, do you?
Yeah.
They're not going to say,
No,
God, you look like
exactly.
shit.
Exactly. No, exactly.
So
You're
maybe
right.
there'll be a psychological
I suppose they
aspect to
have
this
I
whole
suppose they have a
personal
role.
shopping.
Yes. Actually, yes, I suppose they do.
Getting people over a certain fear, I thought it's probably quite a challenge.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of the personal shoppers, don't they, in Selfridges or Harrods have an absolute nightmare when the buyer has pulled in everything studded and fringed.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, whoa! You look great in that style.
Yes. Right, have we seen the whole thing? Right, let's see the last two.
I like this.
That's cool. It's kind of like the tiger print, but kind of really pale.
It's so big and
Yeah.
abstract. Maybe
Yeah.
it's really oversized. They really like their nods, don't they, to Japan, to
Yes,
minimalism.
absolutely, yes. But I think you're right, it's the least successful thing. And there they all are, being applauded, no doubt. Are we applauding?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
am.
think let them grow, but get behind
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
I
I think
they
let's
have,
watch and see.
Yes.
they're needed.
It's like with any, design house. It's really interesting because there's so much toing and froing at the moment, and I always kind of think that on the first collection you can't really judge anything because it's the first collection.
Yes,
it needs
exactly.
time to find legs and
People need to be
you
given
know,
it, don't they?
exactly. And it seems a bit ridiculous to be like, oh, that was a flop, or oh, it was okay, and then they get someone in again, because it's like the more you do that, the more you're taking away from someone having the time to develop and build a language and recreate something.
Negativity will breed negativity.
There you
But
go.
it's a shame
On
because
that,
you see
yeah.
it so much when you read it of some new kids collection and it's slated. You're like, remember who they are, remember where their brain is at. Give them some time because
Well,
you've given them the time to put them in there in the first place.
I agree with that up to a point, but I think it's a very good exercise to be at the beginning of your career pulled up short and someone say, look, you've got to do better than this. Because it's very easy at the beginning of your career. It's the same with writing as well. You copy the people that you like and their expressions or their vocabulary at least, and that's so good. You've got to quite quickly. I mean, I always think the fashion world is a very generous world, but it's very tough.
Absolutely.
They give you a chance, they might give you a second chance, but after that, you're out. So you've got to wise up very quickly, no matter what level it is, And so I think we have got to be. I think it's duty to be tough. To young designers or young people in any field, really.
No, I would absolutely agree with you. But I also think with toughness comes, I guess it's that horrible. Can we be critical but developmental at the same time?
Yeah.
A bit of responsibility.
Because I know if I was a new designer and I'd put out a collection that you pour your soul into, because designers do. When you read then in the press. You've got all these hundreds of Twitter followers going, we love you, but then a very high-profile press person comes along and says, weak. I think you kind of need to give them some advice within
Constructive criticism.
Yes.
that. Yeah, I hate that word too. It's horrible.
What was the exact word?
Constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism, yes.
Yeah.
No, I believe in that.
So I think be tough, but get help because they're a new generation. They're going to rule eventually, aren't they?
Yeah.
Just by the law of nature, we're all going to die, and somebody younger is going to be.
Sure, absolutely.
Help 'em.
The trouble with being a journalist, of course, is that your job is to entertain and inform
Yes.
your readers, not to do a teaching with
Yeah, of
design,
course.
much as one would like to. I mean,
A few words of wisdom.
I
I'm
think
going
it's
to kill it.
terrific. Well, no, one does pop in a few words, whether they're wisdom or not is up to the reader, I suppose.
I've read quite a lot of yours when
Only
you were at the
quite?
Sunday Times. I used to go and I used to always read your couture reports.
Oh, I'm so pleased, yes.
I did, and
I'm
I
sure
thought,
you did.
and I thought, well, this is advisory.
this is
There
why-
is
this is-
advice here.
My dear Rob, this is exactly why you're so good.
And when was your book out again? Cooking with Colin.
On that note, cooking it up. On that note, I'm just going to say thank you very much indeed. For you've been entertaining, you've also been intelligent. None of you looks particularly intelligent, I thought. When I walked in, I thought, oh God, this is going to be difficult. It's been really, really enjoyable. Really enjoyable. And it all starts from that, and that was really enjoyable too.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.